Welcome back, deep divers. Ready for another trip down the rabbit hole?
Always.
All right, well, buckle up, because today we're heading straight into the heart of 1968.
Mm.
A year, brimming with cultural shifts and, well, let's just say unrest.
Definitely a pivotal year, no doubt.
Absolutely, and you know what makes it even more fascinating? We're diving into the attempted assassination of Andy Warhol,
Oh, wow. By Valerie Solanas.
the one and only. Now, we've got a whole collection of excerpts and accounts really giving us a front row seat to this wild clash of art, fame, and radical feminism. I mean, talk about a potent mix, right?
It's a story that keeps drawing people in, and not just for the shock value of the act itself. It's more about what it reveals, I think, about the undercurrents of that era.
Right, like a snapshot of anxiety, shifting power dynamics, and how people were grappling with identity and art in a world on the brink of major change.
Exactly. It's like tearing through a keyhole into the soul of the 60s.
Okay, so picture this. We've got Andy Warhol, king of pop art, the guy behind those iconic soup cans and celebrity portraits.
And pushing the boundaries of filmmaking, too. Don't forget that.
Oh, absolutely. But then enter Valerie Solanas, radical feminist writer, known for her, how do we put this delicately, let's say bold manifesto.
The SKM Manifesto.
Yep, that's the one. And for those who don't know, SKM stands for, wait for it, Society for Cutting Up Men.
A title that definitely grabs your attention.
Do you think?
Mhm.
It was satirical, of course, but also a deep dive into critiques of patriarchy and power. So here we have these two figures, polar opposites in many ways, operating in the same cultural space. New York City in the 1960s. What a time to be alive, huh?
The 60s were like a pressure cooker, right? Civil rights, Vietnam War, the sexual revolution, everything was bubbling over. It felt like the old rules were crumbling, and people were searching for new ways to express themselves, to challenge the status quo.
And Warhol and Solanas, in their own distinct ways, they really embodied that spirit of rebellion.
No doubt. Two sides of the same coin, maybe.
Interesting way to put it. So how did their paths even cross? Well, believe it or not, Solanas actually had a part in one of Warhol's films, I, a Man.
Really? Didn't know that.
Yep, true story. But their relationship went downhill fast over a script Solanas had written. It was called Up Your Ass, a title that, well, I think speaks for itself,
Definitely provocative.
to say the least. So she gives this script to Warhol, hoping he'll produce it. But Warhol, he claims he lost it. And this is where things get, well, messy.
That's got to be frustrating having your work just disappear like that, especially when you're dealing with someone like Warhol, someone with so much influence.
Exactly. And Solanas was already convinced that people were out to get her, to silence her voice. She thought Warhol and her publisher were in cahoots, deliberately suppressing her work. So this missing script just fueled her paranoia,
I can see how that would happen. It's like adding fuel to the fire.
and she becomes fixated on getting that script back. When Warhol can't produce it, she starts demanding money.
It's important to remember, though, that Solanas was living on the edge back then, struggling financially, feeling powerless. And Warhol, in her eyes, he represented everything she was up against.
Yeah, that makes sense. She saw him as the gatekeeper holding the keys to success, to recognition. And this back and forth between them, it goes on for a while. She'd show up at the factory, Warhol's studio, demanding her script, demanding payment.
Yeah.
Talk about tension brewing.
Like a pot about to boil over.
And on June 3rd, 1968, it finally did. That's when things took a dark turn, a very dark turn.
The day of the shooting.
Yep. Witnesses say Solanas looked different that day, almost strange. It was a hot summer day, but she was bundled up in a fleece-lined coat and a turtleneck sweater, like she was hiding something, or maybe already detached from reality.
Chillin'.
She walks into the factory, finds Warhol on the phone with Viva, one of his superstars, and just like that, she pulls out a .32 caliber pistol and starts shooting.
Wow. Just like that. No warning.
Apparently not. Pure chaos erupted. One witness, the art critic Mario Amaya, he thought the shots were coming from outside, from the window.
Yeah.
He even described the gun in Solanas' hand as looking like something out of a Dick Tracy comic strip. It's almost surreal how he remembers that detail amidst all the chaos.
I guess those kinds of things stick with you. Amaya got hit, didn't he?
Yeah, grazed by a bullet, but he managed to escape. And Jed Johnson, Warhol's assistant, he hid in Warhol's office.
Smart move.
But here's the thing. In the middle of all this panic, Solanas confronts Fred Hughes,
Warhol's manager, right?
the one and only. She even points the gun at him.
Oh, wow. This could have been so much worse.
No kidding. But Hughes, he somehow convinces her to leave. She takes the elevator and disappears.
leaving behind a scene I can't even imagine. So what happened to Warhol? Was he?
Well, that's a story for another time. Or should I say, the next part of our deep dive.
So yeah, there's Warhol shot laying there at the factory. Someone calls an ambulance, and this is wild. It took forever to get there.
Forever. Like, how long are we talking?
Over 20 minutes. And remember, this was before 9/11 was a thing in New York. So imagine the chaos trying to get help.
I bet. 20 minutes, though? I mean, that's an eternity when every second counts.
Absolutely. And get this, when the paramedics finally show up, there were reports they didn't even want to use the siren. Said it would cost extra.
Not kidding, right?
Nope. Hard to believe, huh? Considering Warhol was, clinging to life. They ended up carrying him down 6 flights of stairs in a wheelchair.
6 flights. Just, wow. It's kind of mind-blowing, how different things were back then.
Yeah, no kidding. And this whole scene, it just shows how unprepared people were for something like this.
It's like a stark contrast to the image we have of Warhol, this icon at the center of the art world.
Exactly. All the glamour, the fame, it just vanishes in an instant. Just raw vulnerability. And he gets to the hospital, they say he's in critical condition.
Critical? Like, how critical are we talking here?
Well, they actually pronounced him clinically dead at first. The bullet, it had gone through his chest, his abdomen, damaged so many organs. It's honestly a miracle he even survived.
Okay, now that is seriously intense. So how did he pull through? Was it just like sheer willpower?
Well, there was definitely some of that Warhol spirit involved, but the real hero is Dr. Giuseppe Rossi, the surgeon who operated on him. He actually massaged Warhol's heart, got it beating again. Talk about a close call.
That's unbelievable. So after that, it was just a matter of time.
Oh, no, no, no. Warhol underwent major surgery. His recovery was long and painful. He had to wear a surgical corset for the rest of his life. Imagine that. A constant reminder of the trauma.
Yeah, that's heavy. Well, all this is happening. What about Solanas? Was she just out there roaming free?
Nope. She actually turned herself in a few hours after the shooting. Walked right up to a policeman in Times Square.
Just like that. No running, no hiding.
Nope. In her statement to the police, she said, and I quote, "Warhol had too much control of my life." A pretty revealing statement, don't you think?
It speaks volumes, that's for sure. Yeah. I mean, this whole thing with the script, the money, it seems like she was desperate for some kind of control, some kind of recognition.
And she urged reporters to read her SEO manifesto, to understand her actions.
But even among feminists, opinions about Solanas were, well, let's just say they were all over the place. Some saw her as a hero, striking a blow against patriarchy, while others condemned her violence, felt she actually hurt the movement.
Right. It was like this Rorschach test. People saw what they wanted to see in her actions. And then, to complicate things even further, she was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia.
Oh, wow. So now there's this whole other layer to the story.
Exactly. Some people use this diagnosis to dismiss her, to say she was just crazy. But it also raises questions about how mental illness was viewed back then, how it affected her case and her public image.
So what happened at her trial? Did they, take her mental state into account?
Well, initially, she was deemed incompetent to stand trial. They sent her to a psychiatric institution, Matawan State Hospital for the Criminally Insane.
Oh, I've heard of that place. Not exactly a walk in the park, right?
Not at all. A place with a pretty dark history, notorious for its harsh conditions. But even from there, Solanas found a way to make headlines. She was released on bail at some point, but then she gets arrested again for something pretty bizarre.
What'd she do?
Get this. She calls Warhol from jail, tries to pressure him into buying a screenplay she'd written.
Wait, what? After trying to kill him?
Yeah, pretty wild, right? Even after everything, she still saw him as a way to get ahead. It's a bit disturbing, honestly.
It's like she was stuck in this loop, this fixation on Warhol that she just couldn't escape.
It's a complex psychological situation for sure. But in the end, she pleaded guilty to first-degree assault and ended up serving 3 years in prison. The rest of her life was the sad cycle of being in and out of psychiatric institutions. A tragic figure, really.
Yeah, she was definitely a product of her time, but also someone who made choices that had lasting consequences. This deep dive, it's been intense, to say the least. We've gone through a lot of darkness, but there's another side to this story, right? We need to talk about how this shooting affected Warhol himself.
Oh, yeah. The impact on him was huge on so many levels. We'll get into that right after this.
It's hard to even imagine, right? Surviving something that traumatic and just coming out the other side unscathed.
Yeah, like how do you even begin to process something like that?
Well, for Warhol, the changes were everywhere, both inside and out. Physically, he never really recovered from the injuries. That corset he had to wear, I mean, that's a constant heavy reminder.
Yeah, that would mess with you for sure.
But it's the psychological scars that really run deep. He withdrew from the public eye, became much more reclusive.
That freewheeling energy, it was gone. Warhol once described life after the shooting as feeling like a dream, like he was just watching it all on TV instead of actually living it. Kind of a detached feeling, disillusioned.
That's heartbreaking. And did that feeling, does it seep into his art?
Absolutely. There's a definite shift after 1968. His
Yeah.
earlier work, it had that vibrant, almost celebratory energy. But after the shooting, things got darker, more introspective.
So, like, what are we talking about? Any specific examples?
Well, look at his skulls paintings, for instance.
Oh, yeah, those are intense.
Right. Stark, almost photorealistic. You can't look away from them. They force you to confront death, mortality, themes that Warhol himself was wrestling with.
So it's like he's using his art to work through the trauma to make sense of what happened.
Exactly. And maybe to warn others, to remind them how fragile life is. Even his portraits from this period, they feel different. Not the glamorous, larger-than-life celebrity images he was known for.
More vulnerable, you're saying.
Yeah, there's a sense of isolation, almost like he's peering into the soul, not just capturing the surface. It's pretty powerful stuff.
It is. But you know what's really interesting? Despite everything he went through, Warhol never publicly expressed any hatred or resentment toward Solanas.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable, isn't it? In interviews, he even said he didn't dislike her, didn't hold her responsible.
Wow. That's a lot of grace, considering what she did to him.
It is. Maybe it speaks to a certain empathy and understanding of her mental state. He almost saw her as a victim, someone driven by forces beyond her control.
It's another layer to this already complex story. Makes you wonder, how would things have played out differently if, say, this happened in a different time, a different place?
That's a great question. Would Solanus be seen as a feminist icon, a martyr, or just a disturbed individual? Would people view Warhol's art differently? Through the lens of victimhood.
It's impossible to say for sure, but it does highlight how context shapes our understanding of events, of people.
Absolutely. We bring our own baggage, our own perspectives to the table.
Well, this deep dive has definitely given me a lot to chew on. The shooting, it wasn't just some sensational news story, right? It was this collision of personalities, ideologies, and historical forces that we're still feeling the ripples of today.
It's a reminder that history, it's not just about dates and facts. It's about people, their motivations, the choices they make, and how those choices create these pivotal moments that shape how we see the world.
Well said. We've covered so much ground today, from the 1960s cultural scene to the psychology of these two individuals. We've seen how the shooting impacted Warhol, Solanas, and, frankly, the art world as a whole.
And it's a story that continues to spark debate, analysis, and frankly, just plain fascination.
For sure. And to our listeners, you know the drill. We encourage you to dive deeper, explore Warhol's art, Solanas's writings, the whole context of that era.
It's a journey, one that will challenge your assumptions, pique your curiosity, and hopefully leave you with a deeper appreciation for just how complicated the human experience can be.
And remember, history isn't just some dusty old storybook. It's alive, it's evolving, and it's shaping our present and our future. So keep questioning, keep exploring, and until next time, keep diving deep.